Thanks, Avinash, and thank you all the organizers for organizing this and inviting me. It is a pleasure to be here. I was telling Avinash this is the hardest slot for me with the jet lag right after lunch. I'll try to not sleep through my talk and hopefully also keep you awake. So this work is joint with my amazing student Ayub Fuzul, who is a fifth year student. I'm sort of lying when I say joint work. This is really, you've heard of stories where, okay, I give a problem and the student comes back with the paper. This is almost like that. So it is really his work on a very classical problem, a very fundamental variant of a very classical news vendor problem that all of us have seen. So it's so the news vendor problem or a newsboy problem. A newsboy is facing an uncertain demand of newspapers and is trying to decide how many to buy. Any unsold are useless at the end of the day, and if he was short of newspaper, there's some lost opportunity. So this is this very basic trade-off, and we all know the closed form solution for any distribution. And what we consider what this work considers is a very fundamental generalization of this this problem, motivated by a setting that all e-commerce e-retailers face. In e-commerce, you have the advantage of placing inventory away from the demand, and therefore you're able to have better inventory policies by risk pooling over a cluster of demand. But then you have to so you're placing inventory far from demand, and you have multiple warehouses. So it gives a huge advantage to as compared to a policy which was planning inventory for each location separately. But at the same time, there is a complex, the optimization problem becomes more complex. You have to jointly plan the inventory of all the warehouses, and then in addition a fulfillment policy, because demand is not going to show up all at once. It shows up one by one, and when the demand shows up, you have to match it to one of the available unit in the warehouse. Okay, so there's a joint inventory planning plus a fulfillment policy that you want to optimize. But this is the advantage that you get in an e-commerce setting. And really, these are the two questions that we are going to address in this work: how to jointly plan the inventory across multiple warehouses, and how do you fulfill with a given inventory, with that inventory, how do you fulfill the sequentially arriving demand over time. And really the sequence of the questions is reverse. Really, the inventory policy will need to first posit a fulfillment policy, and therefore, so these are really joint, these are not separate questions. These are the inventory, that inventory policy may be good for certain fulfillment policy, but not good for certain other fulfillment policy. So these are really joint questions. Okay, and this is really, I think, this is really a very fundamental question. And from the time of news vendor, which is 70 years or 60 years, I don't know the first reference for news vendor, but very little is known for this I think a very classical generalization of that very basic problem. Very little in terms of here. Okay, so the problem already becomes NP hard, and there are certain inapproximability results as well. When I say very little in terms of structural insights of some near optimal policy or some special cases of optimal with some nice structure, and that was the motivation of our work, to get some policy with some insights about the structure, as well as some theoretical guarantees on those on that policy. Okay, so as I said, in the news vendor, the objective is minimizing the expected inventory cost, which includes the holding cost of the leftover inventory, plus some opportunity cost, or we call it the backlog cost of unmet demand. Okay, and now because you have multiple locations, you have a fulfillment cost or the shipping cost. Okay, now the problem is sort of trivial if the demand is deterministic, right? If we assume that we can carry fractional units, okay, there's an integer program sitting in there if you have deterministic demand, but for known distributions, this problem, if I give you the demand distribution and or you have access to sampling from that distribution, and the natural objective would be to minimize the expected inventory plus shipping cost. Okay, now this problem should take back a little from what I said earlier. Very little is known. That's not completely true without the second part of my sentence. If I know the distribution, see, the solution is, I mean, we have all used that. We could just do sample average approximation. Okay, why we just take samples of demand? We compute, we just write that the expectation is just empirical over that, empirical average over the samples. There are two caveats to that solution. In that sample average program, I would be solving an offline fulfillment where I see the whole demand at once, and I see the second stage becomes a min cost flow. Okay, what we are facing is a sequential arrival, and when the demand arrives, I need to match it there and then. Okay, so so that's one caveat. Now you may say there are some competitive ratio results which compare the online cost to the offline cost, and that would imply, if we use that kind of algorithm, that would imply certain guarantees. Then I would also point out that this sample average based approaches, they tell you almost nothing about the structure of the solution. So especially working with practitioners, so I've been so I spend a day at Amazon for past 2-3 years, and I've been working with them closely on some of these problems, and they are very reluctant to use algorithms which don't give insight about the solution, the structure of the solution. So that was another motivation where which was lacking, what was lacking in the current approaches. Okay, so we wanted to, I mean, initially we started out trying to find, with known distribution, trying to find some algorithm with structure, and it's very hard to beat that sample average approximation. Okay, but we also observed that if the solution that you computed with that known distribution is tested against some distribution that is slightly perturbed, there could be cases where your solution performs terribly. So that was, finding a solution with a nice structure and addressing this sensitivity motivated us to consider a distributionally robust approach where the goal is where you're given some ambiguity set of distributions in some ways, and there are several ways that people have looked at in the literature. This by no means is an exhaustive list. So you're given a ambiguity set which specifies the set of distributions, and you want to minimize the worst case expected cost over this set of distributions. So you make your decisions, which is the inventory. An adversary observes your decisions and picks a distribution from the given set, and you compute your expected cost over that worst case. Okay, and the set we will look at is a moment-based ambiguity set, which is you know the mean and the variance of the distributions. Okay? You're given the mean and variance of the distribution, and an adversary is free to pick any distribution given that mean and variance. Okay? So let me be more specific about our model. So you have multiple locations. You choose an initial inventory of single product. You choose the inventory for all the locations, and then the adversary observes your inventory solution, picks a worst case distribution from that moment on ambiguity set, and gives, so here the second number in the red, so 0 by 1, 0/2, that 1 2 1 1, that is the demand. Okay, and the first number is denoting how many have arrived. So adversary picks the distribution, samples from that distribution, and picks an arbitrary order. Actually, our results hold for worst case order as well. Yeah, so it sends the demand. The sequential arrival is also picked adversarially. Okay, and now for each request, when the request arrives, the policy needs to decide which unit to match. Okay. So here the first demand arrives, and you let's say you matched to that warehouse. Is there a pointer? Yeah, to this warehouse. Then the second demand arrived here, and you matched it to this warehouse. The third demand arrived here, and you matched it to this warehouse. Okay, and so on. Okay. And in the end, there is some leftover inventory. You pay a holding cost per unit of the leftover. In this case, there was no unmet demand, so there's no backlog. But if there was, you would pay a backlog and the shipping in the fulfillment. Okay, so that is the model. Any questions about the model? Yes. So no, so there is no replenishment. There is that is your first stage one-shot decision, and yeah, there's no. But that's without loss of generality. Replacing inventory somewhere else already incurs the shipping cost that you would do anyway. Right? What is the planning for that? So this is, you mean concretely, practically, or? So so a practical problem would consider replenishment, but here we are just considering one shot. You plan for inventory, and then that is fulfilled over the season. From a practical point of view, long lead time products like fashion products, there the inventory decisions are made once, like for fall, whatever Amazon needs to carry in their warehouses, those orders are placed sometime early in the year, and they're just sitting there. There's no replenishment, but yes, a more general problem for general products would be would consider a multi-period setting for replenishment as well. Yes. Any questions about the model here? Yeah. Okay. So so this is our one thing I wanted, the title said metric. I didn't specify explicitly. So here the distances, the distances or the costs, they satisfy a triangle inequality. They're a metric, and this is the holding cost, and this is the backlogging cost. Okay. The another assumption we make here is, so our ambiguity, distributional ambiguity set is specified by the mean and the variance, and this is another assumption in this work, that the demands across locations are uncorrelated. Of course, we would like to solve the more general case, but yeah, this is our progress so far. Okay. And our goal is to optimize, to find a inventory policy and a fulfillment policy that minimizes the worst case expected cost over this ambiguity set. Okay, so So this problem has been looked at in the literature, and in fact the first reference I know is from 1958 by Scarf, that considered the single location version of this problem. So you're just planning inventory for one location. Okay, there's no fulfillment. It's just one location, and the demand has mean mu, variance sigma square, and it's a very nice result. Probably the first reference I know for distributionally robust optimization. It's a very nice result, a closed form solution for the inventory, which is mu plus some factor of standard deviation. Okay, and that factor it has a very nice intuition. It's square root b by h minus square root h by b. So some economic interpretation of the economics of the problem. Okay, and yeah. So for the multi-location version, this has been looked at in the literature, but and I have some references here. Again, by no means exhaustive. They propose for multiple location, the version we are considering. In the literature, the works have proposed some heuristics and compared to some lower bounds of the problem, and the closest to our work would be this paper by Govind Rajan et al. In 21, which presents some heuristics that they test for small number of locations, and that performs well compared to a benchmark. But very little, as I said, is known about the structure of some near optimal policies or any theoretical guarantees about the heuristics. Okay, and that is the motivation of our work. So let me tell you our results. So we are able to give an algorithm where the policy has a very nice structure. Okay, the result I presented about Scarf in there, it's beautiful because one, it's closed form, it's optimal closed form, and it has a very nice structure. So our policy generalizes Scarf in a very preserving that the simplicity and intuitive nature of the inventory solution. Okay, and the fulfillment policy is also very it also has a nice structure, and I would it's sort of a greedy. It's not greedy. You don't that actually is bad, but it has a nice closeness to some greedy like policy. Okay, which I'll be able to explain in the next few slides. Okay, we can analyze the worst case performance of our policy, and we actually show that our policy inventory and fulfillment policy is a polylogarithmic approximation compared to a lower bound. So our cost is a factor polylog of the number of warehouses times a lower bound. Okay, but empirically we show that it's not polylog. Empirically we are much closer to the lower bound, as compared to the theoretical guarantees. Okay, so let me start with a warm up from Scarf, which was single location. Let's go to multi location, but a uniform metric. Okay, so all locations are at distance L from each other. Okay, without loss of generality, I'll assume that demand, and I can translate the demand to warehouses, lose some constant, but I'll assume that warehouses and demand are the same, are at the same location. Okay, so you have these warehouses all on a uniform metric, and I'll consider some decomposition of that objective function. Okay, first let me ignore the backlogging cost let me ignore the unmet demand. Okay, and look at any location, any single location. if you have inventory at that location for the demand, you will fulfill from there. Otherwise, you will pay a cost L and fulfill from some other location. Okay, but when you fulfill from some other location, there's a you can think of as there's a virtual backlog cost. So you paid a cost of L, but you actually saved the holding of that location. So really, it's L minus H. So any unmet demand, so if I look at each node in isolation, it was paying holding H and a virtual backlog of L minus H, right? So, so that means from scarf, my inventory solution looking at this node in isolation will be this mu plus sigma square root L minus H by H minus H by L minus L. Okay, looking at that node in isolation. Now similarly, let me now ignore the fulfillment cost, shipping cost. Then it just becomes a single node problem, and there I know the solution is just the scarf solution. Okay, so now I'll write an LP with these constraints. So I minimize the total inventory subject to each node carrying inventory corresponding to that virtual backlog L minus H solution, and total inventory at least the scarf solution as a single node. Okay. And we can show this is actually a constant approximation to the offline problem. Okay, if I carry this solution and I see all the demand at once, this will be a constant approximation. Okay, but now if I see demand one by one, okay, even the uniform metric is not a non-trivial problem. It is a paging problem if you think about it, right? It is so when I see one by one, if the demand comes in and I have inventory at that location, I'll fulfill from there. But if I do not have an inventory there, I have to go L distance, but there is a choice where to go, and that's like the paging problem of which page to remove from the cache. Okay, and there we know there's a log n lower bound, and in fact our fulfillment policy does exactly the same thing, assign it randomly to one of the locations with inventory. In the paging problem with the k cache and you have a page fault, you bring in a page, you remove a random page from the cache, and that gives a log n competitive ratio, and here we get this. So here with this we can prove this inventory policy and the sequential fulfillment policy is order log n approximation. Okay, so this uniform metric gave us the idea of this virtual backlog. Okay, and I just go to a random location. If I don't have inventory with me, I'll go to a random location which has inventory uniformly at random. Okay, now we want to use this virtual backlog idea, we can use it for general metric, but now in a general metric, I cannot just go to a uniformly at random location, because now I need to also somehow trade off the distance. Right? Here the distance was immaterial. Anywhere I go, I was paying the same. So now I need to somehow move my probability distribution based on the metric. Okay, I need to change this probability distribution of where to go based on the metric, and this is where for the general metric we need to introduce more ideas, and what we consider is what we do is we first consider a hierarchical clustering of the metric. Okay, so you have this. I'm showing the map of US. So you consider a hierarchical clustering. So this is sort of a laminar family of clusters, okay, with some properties that I will come to. So you consider a hierarchical clustering, and and then you compute a fulfillment policy on this hierarchical clustering by approximating this cost, inventory plus fulfillment, by a surrogate cost. And let me define the surrogate cost. I don't know if you can read this. Okay. So surrogate cost is sort of like, I constructed the surrogate cost function sort of like the uniform metric. Uniform metric was paying a backlog for total demand minus total demand minus total quantity, plus holding for total quantity minus total demand, positive part, plus some L times this deficit, right? So now instead of L times, because there is no uniform L, this hierarchical clustering, I just pay the diameter of my parent. So I'm a demand in this cluster. If I can't fulfill from myself, I'll have to go to the parent, and I just pay diameter of the parent as the cost. Okay, so this is the surrogate function that we define, and what we will do is we'll define a fulfillment policy where we will show that this cost is upper and lower bounded by some factor of this surrogate function. Okay, and so then we can optimize for this over this, and now we have decomposed sort of like the uniform. Okay, and we will be able to use those ideas. Okay, so in the next few minutes, let me, I have time. So in the next few minutes, let me try to tell you about our fulfillment policy, which allows us to prove this cost function, inventory plus fulfillment, is upper and lower bounded by some factor of this surrogate function. Okay. Okay. So so we have this. So here I denote this is the demand. The red customer is the demand. Now I denote the inventory. So let's consider a fixed given inventory. So here I have these clusters with the shaded, which are shaded off, which means there is no inventory in that cluster at this point. Okay, and you get a demand in that cluster. Okay, so first you go to the parent or to the parent of parent that has inventory. Okay, so first you go to the cluster which has inventory. So in this case, it would be this. Okay, so you had these three clusters, but the parent cluster is this. Okay, so you go to the parent, and now within that parent, you have a child of these. I want to fulfill equally from these children. Okay, now this child does not have any inventory. The only two have, so these are the two children who have inventory. So I'll fulfill half and half. So I'm trying to, again, what was the goal? The goal was to construct the probability distribution. So I think of this as constructing probability distribution that is metric aware or distance aware to get the assignment. Okay, so I'll fulfill half and half from these two clusters. Now I'll go further within that cluster. So that cluster could have its own children. Let's say I'm looking at this cluster, and this has these four children. One of the child does not have inventory. So now you get 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So it goes 1/6, 1/6, 1/6. So you basically, and then similarly there also, let's say that you had 3 and 1 did not have inventory. So you would get half and half. So half of half is 1/4. So you basically are doing uniform greedy on a tree. You go to the parent, you're doing a uniform greedy. This hierarchical clustering is giving you a tree. You get a demand on the leaf. You go to the least level above that fulfills you, and you do a uniform greedy on that. Okay, and that's the probability distribution the fulfillment policy will use to assign and sequentially assign the request. Okay. Okay. So I want with this fulfillment policy, we can show that for any demand realization, this is actually a point-wise result, the upper bound is within a log square. N was number of warehouse locations, log square n of the surrogate cost. Okay. Now, so that would automatically imply that the worst case expected is also within log square. Okay. Now I need to prove that this this cost is actually lower bounded, so I can do the optimization over the surrogate. Okay. And and this is where so the upper bound was point-wise. For every demand realization, I was able to show surrogate the original cost is within log square of the surrogate. To show a lower bound, that we can't do point-wise. In fact, we can't even do expected. What we can do is the worst case expected cost is at least some factor of the surrogate. Okay. And in fact, what we do is we look at this hierarchical clustering. We will look at well separated families of clusters. What well separated means, just think of this. These are the clusters at the lowest level of the tree. I mean, all of these are lowest levels of the tree, but I'll only consider some subset which are well separated. So that between each cluster there is a distance L. Okay, at least L, which means that is I'm trying to construct a lower bound of the cost in terms of the surrogate. Okay, and the worst case expected cost. So any demand within the yellow cluster not met by inventory within the yellow cluster has to travel at least L. Okay, and I can construct a probability distribution which places high demand within high demand at locations that are outside of these yellow clusters. Okay, so I can assume that all the inventory outside of these yellow clusters is gone. Therefore, I have to travel at least L. Therefore, I get that lower bound. Okay, and so with that kind of construction, we can show that the worst case expected cost for this fulfillment policy that I just described is at least this factor of the surrogate cost. Okay, and this factor is defined by the clustering. You have there are many parameters here: alpha, beta, gamma, and k. Alpha is the so these are all parameters of the clustering. And in fact, let me just tell you this. So we can get for any metric with all these parameters as order log n, we can get such a clustering. And let me define: alpha is the diameter of the cluster to the margin meaning the separation. Gamma is the ratio of margins between consecutive levels of the tree. Okay, and k is the number of levels, and beta is the breadth in any level. Okay, so so with all these parameters as log, you can for any metric you can get a hierarchical clustering with all these parameters as log n. So this would give me a log to the 4. Okay. So here again, we are talking about approximation ratios. By the way, for the uniform metric, we showed there's a log lower bound already sitting. So we are polylog. Just preempting that question, we don't know if this is tight. So, but this is really the first result in this in this problem direction. So yeah, so some of the analysis may be possible to make it tighter. Okay, so with that fulfillment policy, that surrogate function with a log to the 4 lower bound and a log square upper bound. I just optimize over the surrogate function. And surrogate function is almost like the uniform metric cost function. And what we use is just this part ignored the backlog cost. You get an inventory policy like this with this virtual backlog. Okay, here you ignored the shipping cost, and there you get the scarf solution just for the single location. How do you combine these? We used an LP to combine this like before. So you minimize the total inventory subject to, for each cluster you carry the cluster scarf inventory with a virtual backlog, which is, so here this virtual backlog BC, you can think of that as the diameter of the parent minus H. Okay, that's is not exact, but you can think of it like the diameter of the parent. That is what you will have to go minus H. Okay, and so for each cluster you have the constraint that the total inventory in the cluster is at least the inventory as if scarf carried by the scarf solution, treating it as a single point with the mean, total mean being summation of mu I, sigma being that, and the virtual backlog. Okay, and the total inventory being the scarf inventory, treating the whole system as one node. Okay, so you have and find the minimum such minimize the total number of units. Okay, and we show that with this with this solution and a hierarchical greedy or a uniform this hierarchical uniform greedy fulfillment gives us a polylog approximation. Okay, now I managed to construct give an algorithm which has this nice structure of both the inventory as well as fulfillment policy. Talking to a practitioner, I mean, this polylog factors are not something that they would be they would even entertain listening. But interestingly, the clustering approach, this hierarchical clustering idea, or actually the fulfillment based on this hierarchical clustering idea, is something that is implemented at Amazon. I can talk about this because this is publicly released. So they have recently their fulfillment policy in the US divided US into 9 regions, and based on some clustering, and they do a regionalized uniformly within the warehouses in fulfillment policy within the region for a demand arising in a region. Okay, so some, of course, it's not like what we have in the paper, but there are some elements of that are there in practice. These two work were independent, by the way. Our work had no influence on this, but it's something that can inform practice as well, is what I meant to highlight. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to highlight, now Amazon is planning this network for millions of products. They're not carrying a single product. Our hierarchical clustering did not use demand information at all. It was just the metric. So if you had many products with different means and variances and different unit economics, you would get the same hierarchical clustering because it was just based on metric. So the fulfillment policy would actually be the clustering for the fulfillment policy is going to be same over multiple products. So not everything general. I mean, we can't solve the multi-product case, but there are some elements in our approach which carry over for the multi-product case as well, which is useful. Okay, so yeah. I'll be on time. So so we tested our policy with respect to a lower bound numerically, and so our inventory policy is based on. So first of all, we want to point out, even though we can find the policy for our policy is just based on solving an LP. So our policy is not computationally constrained, but here the lower bound was computationally constrained. The lower bound we can compute. The lower bound really is trying to also solve the adversary problem, finding the worst case distribution, which actually can be written exactly as a copositive program, which we cannot solve, but can be approximated by an exponentially sized SDP, exponential in the number of locations. So we don't know, I mean, we can't scale. So we were using small number of locations, and we were comparing to that lower bound with that exponentially sized SDP. Okay, so our comparison is the SDP SDP lower bound. Why lower bound? Because it's not solving the sequential fulfillment. It's solving a block fulfillment. You see all the demand at once, and that problem can be written as an exponentially sized SDP. So that's why I'm saying it's a lower bound. Our policy I described. So and the number of locations we considered were about 10. We considered several cases of distributions. I don't know if you can read. So we considered three different metrics: uniform, a tree with 2 levels, which is really a star, 3 levels, and we tested on normal. Okay, I should define what we tested. So we computed the inventory solution from the SDP, computed the inventory solution from our policy, and then tested it on normal distribution with that mean and variance, gamma distribution with that mean and variance, and log normal distribution with that mean and variance. Okay, so this is not the worst. I'm not showing you the objective, the worst case objective, but really distributions of some interest. And we were within 6% relative gap compared to the policy from that lower bound. We also looking at just the fulfillment cost, okay, just so that we take away the how much we are losing in online versus offline fulfillment, and we were within 20% of this strong benchmark. Which is offline. Okay, so which is not log, but yeah, which is quite strong. So let me conclude. So we gave so here again we were looking at a very fundamental, I think, a very fundamental generalization or variant of this very classical problem, and we were able to construct a policy which has this nice structure, carries some of the simplicity and intuitive and interpretability features of SCARF, with also an intuitive fulfillment policy with provable guarantees. Okay, and I think we are just scratching the surface. I don't think the log to the 6 is anywhere near tight, but hopefully we and also the interesting case is. So there are a lot of, I mean, I didn't explicitly mention, but we consider I told about the correlation. So this is uncorrelated demand. Holding cost is uniform across location. So I think that's a big limitation. Backlogging is uniform across location. That is okay. It's the same demand. It's the demand for the same product. So that may be okay. But holding is uniform across, and there's no correlation. These are two big, I think, two very important important things that if we can relax, that would be very useful. Okay, so I will stop here, and the paper is available on archive. Thank you.